Okay, if I could, let me have your attention, please, and let's see if we can kick off this joint meeting of the House Ed committees for both the Senate and the House. Let's say it the right way, the Senate and House committees on education here, where we can have a communication. So thank y'all for coming. If we could, for a moment back there, Matt, I see you want, will you mind shutting that door right there for us so we can begin? And I got a feeling we're going to hear some singing out there in just a moment as they light that tree there. First of all, thank you for coming and this opportunity to be before you and hear this information and keep pushing this great state forward educationally with this committee. What I'd like to do is, Chairman, if I can, let's just ask Chairman Hickman, do you mind to open us with a prayer? What number are you, 1 down there? No, you're 5.
Yeah, that's it. Let us pray. We want to thank the God that created us, the Jesus that saved us, and the Holy Spirit that sustained us. Lord God, thank you for this day, Lord, and thank you that you've given us an opportunity to serve the great people of Georgia. Lord, we just ask you that you open up our minds and open up our hearts to help us better educate the youth and the children of our school system. Lord, again, we thank you for this season, Lord, and we just want to recognize you as our Savior, Lord, and we thank you for being with us and saving us. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me state, boy, we passed some good bills. I think that are making a very good impact in this state. I've been able to see them on a lot of Zoom meetings, so I'm very proud of the efforts, not only by the folks that voted for and carried the bills, but by 3 of our bills we're going to talk about today and the impact that they are having on education in this state. And again, we need to communicate them so that everybody knows this is happening in our state, and we've got to focus on literacy, reading, and improving that in our state for our young folks. I'll introduce those 2. Chairman Dixon, you want to open up with a statement too here?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You covered it pretty well. Excited to hear from the folks from the State Board of Education today on the 2 literacy bills that were passed last year, and also get an update on the completion schools and how those changes are being implemented and how things are running there as well. We had a very busy session last year. As the chairman said, passed a lot of good legislation. We've got a busy session, I believe, ahead of us this year. And as the chairman from the House stated, our 2 biggest points and priorities is school safety and then literacy. So excited about that and excited about 2024. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let's stay in on that focus. Let me point, we've got a hard stop at 11:55 today. Rules is coming in here right behind us at noon, and we'll need to be out of the room for them to get in here before 12 o'clock. So just know that as we get moving here today. Let's know also that we'll allow some questions, members, as the DOE completes their presentations at the end. Let's be mindful of our hard stop, though, with those questions. And with that, let me start out with HB 538, Representative Ballard's bill that I think is ground shaking for the state of Georgia in trying to improve and what we like to say, stomp out ignorance in the state of Georgia here and teach these kids to read on grade level. We have the Board of Education, Amy Denty. Where are you, Amy? There you go. Amy, tell us a little bit about your role at the DOE, and then if you would, go right into HB 538 and how you are implementing that in our state.
A longtime educator. Is that better? Better? Okay, perfect. So I was appointed to the Georgia Council on Literacy by Governor Kemp this past year. I was also named Director of Literacy at the Georgia Department of Education by Superintendent Woods. Prior to that, I worked in the Office of Rural Education and Innovation, and I spearheaded the instructional and literacy efforts for our rural districts in the state. I've been credentialed by several different agencies to deliver structured literacy professional learning, and I have deep knowledge of the science of reading from my practitioner experience. A long time ago, I was the Georgia Teacher of the Year, and I was also, in addition to being a teacher and an instructional coach, I was a longtime curriculum director and assistant superintendent for teaching and learning in my local school district, which is Wayne County. So that's a little bit about me, and so I come to you in this work as a practitioner. So let me talk just for a moment about Senate Bill 211, which established the Georgia Council on Literacy. As you know, we were established as a result of last year's session and started meeting during the summer. The Georgia Council on Literacy has had 4 meetings, and each of the working groups has met twice. Our first report was just provided on November 30th as required by law. And so the 4 working committees are birth to 5 years, kindergarten to grade 3, professional learning, that includes for new teachers coming into the profession and existing teachers, and community outreach. The council is comprised of 30 members who were appointed by the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the Speaker of the House. And the council is comprised of people from all walks of life. And so it's a great collaborative body. We've spent a lot of this year listening and learning and getting our bearings so that we can make determinations about what needs to happen next and what needs to be supported in this important work. And so I'm really excited about the work of the council and the opportunity to work with so many different kinds of people who care about literacy in our state. So let's move to House Bill 538, the Georgia Early Literacy Act. I like to think of House Bill 538 as having 5 major components: instructional materials, universal screeners, targeted intervention, professional learning, and teacher preparation. And so I want to bring you up to date on the status of where we are at the Georgia Department of Education as far as fulfilling the requirements of House Bill 538. I've got a timeline here, and I'll just talk to you about each of those different buckets as we approach those things on the timeline. So as far as high-quality instructional materials goes, the deadline for the State Board of Education to approve the first list of approved core high-quality instructional materials was January 1st, 2024. The State Board of Education actually approved that first list at the November board meeting, and the Department of Education partnered with the Georgia Language Arts Supervisors Association to form our review committee. Each state board member was asked to appoint a person with deep early literacy knowledge from their district to serve on the committee. The Governor's Office of Student Achievement appointed 2 people to serve on the committee. We have 2 representatives from higher education, and Miranda Williams, Georgia's literacy coach, also with the Governor's Office of Student Achievement, and I serve as ex officio members on that committee. I just want to take just a moment to brag on the work of these educators who came together to do this really difficult work. It was a very collaborative process. All of the members were very serious about doing a really good job of providing a list that local school districts could count on for core materials. And it was just it was a great professional working experience, and I'm so pleased with the work that came out of that. In an effort to help assist districts, we are having a second review. There is a request for information out now, and we will have another review in early 2024. This will allow us to provide a second review and possibly add to the list before local districts spend all of their ESSER money, because some local districts may need to use those funds to provide some of these high-quality instructional materials to their teachers and in their classrooms. And so we're working hard right now on the second review, and it will follow a similar protocol. So the next topic is universal screeners. And so, of course, universal screeners are a way for us to universally assess children, and these screeners provide a way. I say that it's a way to wave the red flag. I've also heard it being compared to the check engine light. And so it lets us know if a child is experiencing a problem in some area. It doesn't tell us all the answers. You still, when that check engine light comes on, you still have to get under the hood, right, and figure out exactly what is wrong. But a good quality universal screener helps to wave that red flag so that we know when we need to intervene with a student. The law required that the Department of Education put out an RFI and approve screeners by July 1st, 2024. This has actually already taken place, and there is already an approved list of screeners. For those of you who have reviewed those lists, you'll see that the list of screeners for House Bill 538 is very, very similar to the list of dyslexia screeners for Senate Bill 48, which is a great thing for our school districts. We were really pleased that our partners at the Sandra Dunnigan Deal Center for Early Language and Literacy conducted a psychometric review of the screeners that are on the House Bill 538 list and developed a report that it's made available widely, but we've provided it to all of our school districts as an additional guidance document so that school districts can take all of that information and they can make the best decision that they can for the people that they're serving in their school districts. And so in addition to these items about universal screeners, the law requires the Department of Education to develop a free or to provide a free universal screener. We are currently working with our assessment vendor, DRC, on developing a free universal screener. Dr. Lindstrom, our dyslexia coordinator, and I meet weekly with the assessment folks, and I'm really excited about the work that is being done to develop a free screener for our folks. The screeners are required starting in August of 2024, although many school districts are already doing this. School districts are required to administer the screeners 3 times a year. Typically, that's the beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of year. And the first screener has to be administered within the first 30 days of school. And so just a little bit more about the free screener that is being developed. Right now, Senate Bill 48 requires children to be screened 1 time a year, and 538 requires 3 times per year. Districts that are using the same screener for both don't really have a problem with that. We're recommending that the dyslexia screener be at that middle of the year screening, and that's for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of variability in kindergarten with screeners, and you can imagine why that is, because children are 5 years old, and lots of times they have to learn how to be kindergarten students before our screeners really provide the very best information. And so there's a lot of reasons we recommend that middle of the year for the dyslexia screening. Our approach in working with DRC is to have one screener that will satisfy both requirements, which really streamline things for our teachers. It keeps children from having to be over-assessed while still providing really high-quality information for guiding next steps for all of our early literacy learners. We anticipate that our screener will be ready on time. The deadline in legislation is August 1st, 2024, and we anticipate that to be ready at that time. So moving along on our timeline and our buckets, tiered interventions is the third component of House Bill 538. And this part of the bill requires that students who show a significant reading deficiency on a screener and subsequent diagnostic test must have a reading intervention plan within 30 days of being identified as having a significant reading deficiency. We know that schools already have processes in place through our MTSS, that's multi-tiered system of support frameworks, and we hope that districts will continue to use these processes and frameworks to develop these intervention plans for students who are showing a significant need. Returning to our timeline, and this goes a little bit back to instructional materials. So the State Board of Education was required by January 1st to have a list of approved core materials. Almost a year later, on December 1st, 2024, local boards of education must approve the high-quality instructional materials in their districts, and then they certify that to the Department of Education by December 15th, 2024. And so also by December 15th of 2024, there's part of House Bill 538 that says that local education agencies, local boards, must provide instructional support for K-3 teachers. And it goes on to describe that instructional support as being things like on-site professional learning, demonstration lessons, prompt feedback after observations. And the bill states that if an LEA can't fund these supports, they're to notify the Department of Education, and the Department of Education will provide guidance on using federal funds and other funding sources. And you see that we have the status on this listed as challenging, and that in green tells why this is challenging. I know that many of you are aware of the federal rule that governs supplanting and supplementing. And so what that means is that state requirements can only be supported by local school districts with state and local funds. We're not allowed to supplant state required activities using federal funds. We can only supplement that, which means going above and beyond. And so you can see why the status of that is a little bit challenging, but of course we're moving forward and working through those things. So continuing with our timeline, the teacher preparation rule is actually being handled by the Georgia Professional Standards Commission, but this part of the legislation requires that the GACE test, which is the test that teachers entering the profession must take, that it must align with developmentally appropriate evidence-based literacy instruction. And so PSC is already hard at work on that and will not have a problem meeting that deadline, I don't believe. Finally, July 1st, 2025, this is the professional learning component. The requirement is that local education agencies will ensure that all K-3 teachers complete a state-approved literacy training program. We're really excited about the work that is already happening throughout the state regarding teacher professional learning. Teachers are buying into the professional learning that they're being asked to complete, and I promise you it is going to make a difference. So the Department of Education has launched the Georgia Literacy Academy. That's in partnership with the Rollins Center and Cox campus. We've supported training in the science of reading. We've supported some structured literacy coaching for leaders and educators. And again, we're making all of these things happen through partnerships with the Rollins Center and Cox campus, through our RESAs, and through literacy leaders like Marietta City Schools. It's really exciting to see the collaboration that is happening around the state for the greater good. So this is a little slide about the Georgia Literacy Academy. Our first course, which is Oral Language as the Foundation for Literacy, launched in November of 2023. These courses are available in Georgia Learns. They're also available in Cox Campus. They're completely free of charge and available to all teachers. They're actually available to all teachers and anyone who is interested in learning. We, of course, are focusing on those K-5 teachers. And again, this is in partnership with the Rollins Center. We are also partnering with the Rollins Center to offer a literacy conference for teachers this summer in June. And we're excited about giving teachers an opportunity to come together and to collaborate with their peers from other parts of the state and also learn from some national leaders in the area of literacy. And so finally, just a few other things that are going on in the state regarding literacy. The Department of Education's Office of Rural Education and Innovation has a huge literacy initiative, and already we've trained right at 2,300 educators in 15 of the 16 RESA districts across our state. That is great work. It's now being headed up by Dr. Charity Roberts, and of course Dr. Bronwyn Reagan Martin is the Deputy Superintendent for our Rural Education office, and they're doing a lot of great work to reach all of those pockets of the state that need this work. Also, the Department of Education has provided funding to support local districts to help teachers pay for dyslexia endorsements and reading endorsements, which is another way to provide that high-quality professional learning. As many of you know, we have new K through 12 English Language Arts standards. Those were approved this past May. They will be implemented in classrooms during the 25-26 school year. And there is a new domain. It's the Foundations domain. It is a domain especially for teachers and students in grades kindergarten through 5th grade. And it's a domain that specifically supports the structured literacy work that is such a foundation in House Bill 538. And that domain includes things like phonological awareness, concepts of print, phonics, fluency, and handwriting. All of the things that we know help build a foundation for strong, literate, skilled readers. And finally, I think this is my last slide. I just want to talk to you about some of the proposals that are important to the Department of Education for the coming year. We want to be able to grow the reading teacher pipeline by expanding the return to work opportunity to include retired teachers who have a dyslexia endorsement or a reading endorsement as a statewide high-need subject area. The second area is being able to sustain the screener delivery. That's that free screener. We all know, what is the old saying? There's no such thing as a free lunch. And so we want to be able to sustain that screener delivery. And we also want to be able to support coaching. That's that instructional support that is required in House Bill 538. So that means that we're asking for support for a tiered statewide coaching model that will help to grow the capacity at regional, district, school, and classroom levels. And finally, a proposal to provide spliced flexibility and to expand the allowable use of spliced funds to include software, subscriptions, digital instructional resources, and those high-quality materials for literacy that are so important for instruction. So I think that's it.
Great, Amy, thank you. And it's exciting to see the plan in place and the efforts made to improve our literacy rates here. I believe we're going to start out with Chairman Dixon with a question, and we'll entertain a few questions, knowing that we do have a hard stop, though.
Thank you. I just had a question on the dyslexia screening. You moving it, you said, to the second screening, the middle of the year. In the Senate bill, there was nothing prohibiting that. Didn't know if the state BOE, if y'all had any rules or anything that were in place?
There's no rule.
Okay.
It's just a recommendation that when districts ask us when they should do that screening, that's been our recommendation. But you're correct, it's not in rule nor is it in law. But we
Thank
do
you.
get a lot of questions from the field about that.
Thank you so much.
Let's get a couple more questions here. Senator, I think bit number 5,
Thank
Hickman.
you. Thank you, Amy. Thank you for being here. A couple quick questions. I know I've seen, like everybody in the council, the list of universal screeners, and there's about 15 or 16 on that list, and really there's only about a third of them, as I recall, that are, quote, high-quality screeners. How are we going to make sure that these school districts are using the high-quality screeners instead of the low-quality screeners?
Okay.
And then I got a second question, if I can ask this. Also, one of our concerns, obviously, is the funding of 538 and all that. Have y'all done some work since the session was over with to determine that, and then have you compared that to what other states are doing as far as cost of like a 538 bill?
Okay. So on the first question about the universal screeners, and I think that it is, it's a little bit scary to say that only about a third of them were high quality screeners and the rest were low quality screeners. And I think that Dr. Morgan and the Deal Center did a great job of explaining all of this in their report. Their report details a lot of information about reliability, validity, and specificity of the screeners. So when school districts make decisions about the screeners they're going to purchase, there are so many things that they have to determine. The Deal Center's report is going to add to all of the information that is out there and in the things that they have to consider when they look at that. Now, obviously, we could continue to narrow those screeners with different requirements and those kinds of things. But I do think that we have to trust to a certain extent that folks out in our school districts know their programs, they know how the screeners that they are choosing interact and support the other programs, and they can certainly use all of that information from the Deal Center, and we hope that they will, and that's why we have liberally shared that information with our school districts to make the best decisions within that net of other things that they're having to think about regarding those screeners. I'm really excited about the free screener that is being developed through DRC and how it will interact with those formative beacon assessments. And so I'm hoping that as that becomes available, more and more people are going to gravitate to that option as a possibility. Yeah, and I would fully agree with that, Senator Hickman. I would fully agree with that. And so there are a lot of things that we can do in providing those needed supports that help us to verify that school districts are using those screeners in an appropriate way. And I can't really answer your second question. I am not the budget and finance person, and so I'm going to have to leave that question for somebody else.
Let me do this too. We've got a few others up for questions. I'll entertain some of those, but we need to move quickly as we have 2 other bills to discuss. Let's go to number 34, Senator Sims. I believe that's you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And thank you for your presentation. I want to ask, how will our state teacher education programs from the Board of Regents assist in the training of teachers? I didn't see them being linked. Maybe they were or maybe they are, but I just didn't hear it.
Yes, ma'am. They're linked through that portion of the bill on teacher preparation, and that's the portion that the Georgia Professional Standards Commission is handling. And they're doing that by changing the requirements for teacher preparation programs, and I would say that the accountability part of that is also that the GACE assessment that teachers have to take is changing. And that is not only for teachers who are teaching the youngest children, grades K through 3, which most of House Bill 538 focuses on. The Georgia Professional Standards Commission has a rule that is putting this in all teacher certification areas, because we know that even a high school science teacher needs to have some knowledge as to how to address a situation when a child comes to them with low reading skills. And so it is being addressed across the board and through our teacher preparation programs in our colleges. But I probably can't say any more than that because that's outside of my realm.
Thank you. And a last question. 15 of the 16 RESAs have already worked with 2,300 teachers. What happened to the 16th?
So that's a great question, and I should have said that in here. So that is through the work of the Office of Rural Education and Innovation, and so Metro RESA does not have any rural school districts, and so we didn't leave Metro RESA out, but we were focused on those 115 rural school districts in the state, but that's a great question.
All right. Quickly again, Representative Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Denty. I just wanted to also share my concern that Senator Hickman talked about the screeners, because this is my understanding. But so we've approved a list of, I think, 16 screeners, and the Deal Center has ranked them, and said the different areas of strength and weakness, and I think there were like 3 that met almost all the criteria or whatever. But at the same time, you all are working on developing a free screener, but the school districts have to choose what screener they're using by August 1st, and that's when your free screener will come out, and then they were looking at this other list. So I'm just concerned about the situation. I mean, like, how will they make their decision if they don't see the free screener first, and will they spend money on one of these other screeners, and then maybe this free screener would have been the best for them? I'm concerned about that.
And Representative Evans, I would say that is part of the messiness of what happens, out in the real world. First of all, many districts are already using universal screeners before House Bill 538 was passed. I mean, that is not unusual. It's not a new idea. And so many school systems right now, if their screener appeared on that list, are going to stick with the same one. They're probably going to wait and vet this free screener that will be available, and they may change after some time period. That part is messy. It is not, there's not like a easy beginning place, and districts have to make these kinds of decisions all the time.
And let me go here. Just let's do this, because we're not going to get the other 2 bills if we don't. We've got a bunch of questions out there. I can see. Would you mind staying around after the meeting?
Sure.
Where a couple of these that have their buttons pushed could ask you,
I'll be
Amy?
glad to.
Representative Evans, if we could, let's just wait till then and we'll catch it. Let's jump on to Senator Hickman's bill here, Senate Bill 211. And first, Amy, great job. Thank you very much. And I congratulate the DOE on the hard effort of implementing Bethany Ballard's bill here of House Bill 538. Are you coming up, Curtis?
You want to do completion schools?
Nope. If we can, let's go to Hickman's bill, Senate bill. Can we do that, Curtis, if that's okay?
So you can do anything you want.
Thank you. Amy? Oh, I thought you had more you were adding to Hickman's bill. So that was it, completed? Well, you fooled me.
I probably did not say an important role of the Georgia Council on Literacy is to monitor the implementation of House Bill 538. And so I just pulled all
rolled
those
them
things
together.
Yes, sir.
I understand. I thought, excuse me, sorry, Senator Hickman, I would have given you more credit there than during there if I had paid attention. Let's then go to House Bill 87. Curtis, would you begin by introducing yourself to the members and then cover your
Yes, I will, sir.
implementation of this?
Thank you, sir. I'm Curtis Jones. I'm a consultant with the Georgia Department of Education. I've been doing that for about a year. I'm also currently the superintendent in residence for the Georgia School Superintendents Association. This past September, the governor appointed me as a commissioner for Georgia's MIC-3, which works with military children as they move throughout the state to help remove the barriers that they may run into. I'm a retired educator for 25 years. 13 of those years was a superintendent in 2 different school districts. And I'm also a retired Army officer. And along the way, Chris and I were named Georgia Superintendents of the Year, and I was named the National Superintendent of the Year. So let's talk about a recap for House Bill 87. A couple of things came out of that were important. One is that we had 3 state charter schools that were going to be converted to completion schools. We also wanted to expand the opportunity for every student in the state to have the opportunity to experience something like what those 3 schools were doing. And so this plan that we're going to talk about is how we're doing that and to give you an update. So let's talk about the 3 schools: Mountain Ed, Foothills, and Coastal Plains. 4 great things have happened for them already. One, they started this school year as a completion school. That was the main reason why I was brought on board, to help find barriers and concerns and to get them out of the way. They also, though, were able to continue with working within the areas that they were already working in, and they completed their October FTE, so they now know what their enrollment looks like. Unfortunately, that enrollment is down, so we need to talk about that, and I will in a few minutes. They also have had you approve the State Board of Education approve their superintendent and their governing boards, and so they're in place. So they're operating, and this is going to be a learning year for those 3 schools. Let's talk about the enrollment issue and the challenges that they have, though. This low enrollment for the completion schools is something that is important, and here's why. And I'll use Foothills as the example. In October of 22, their FTE for new students was 1,700 students. This year, October FTE shows that number is 600, down 2/3. That is true also for the other completion schools as well. And so why is that drop in enrollment happening? And what is it doing to those schools? One is causing anxiety, as you can imagine. The second point, though, is this, and as we've tried to figure out why the enrollment's down, I think it's because we weren't really prepared for this implication. Here's what's happened, I believe. In the past, the student could make the decision if they wanted to be in one of these schools. House Bill 87 moved that decision to 3 different entities. Now the student has to make that decision along with their parent, and if they can get that approved by the parent, then they go to the high school principal and ask the high school principal, may we now go to a completion school? And if the high school principal says yes, then the superintendent says, you have to go through me as well. We haven't trained high school principals to look at this. This is brand new for them. We have trained our high school principals to do this. Look at their list of students who are challenged for graduation and say to them, we can get you through this. We have credit recovery. We have credit repair. We can work with you. And high school principals are used to waiting 3 years maybe before they say it's not going to work. Here's why. Sometimes students will come back. They may come back their sophomore year. They may come back their junior year. And high school principals are used to working with students even past graduation if they have to go to summer school. That's new, because now we're asking principals to look at this group of students and say, some of you may be better served in a completion school. This is going to be a learning year for that process. And that's why I think the enrollment is lower for these schools now. That's a process we're going to have to learn. We also recognize, though, that we have different students. If you're a student and you're 18 years old and you've been declared a dropout, you can still go to a completion school. But if you're not 18 and if you have not been declared a dropout, you now have to go through that process that I just talked about. And that makes it a little bit more difficult as well, because there are now increased requirements. Here's an example: graduation. In the past, a student who went to a completion school met the graduation requirements that either Foothills, Mountain Ed, or Coastal Plains has. Now, these completion schools have to keep up with the graduation requirement for all the schools that they are serving students for. That's a minimum of at least 6 school districts. That's just one example of the new administrative requirements that the completion schools are having to deal with. And it's also causing a delay, because even if the principal and the superintendent say, I will let the student go to a completion school, and oh, by the way, before a superintendent does that, he's going to say to himself or herself, I'm going to have to provide money to go with the FTE that the student's going to receive as well. And that increased money comes from their local funds. Superintendents are hesitant to do that as well. But if they can get it done, the student is still not allowed to enroll in the completion school right away. You got to get the high school permission, you got to get the district's permission, and what we found is that some students will just wait. Here's the best example I can share with you on that. I just learned of a student who was 17. She's pregnant. She wanted to go to a completion school because her regular school is not working well for her. The high school says, we have a way of helping you. And so this particular student has decided to wait until she turns 18, wait until she's declared a dropout, and then enroll in a school. Those are some of the challenges that we're starting to see. And then there's the implication for students that we hadn't even thought about. In the past, the completion schools were able to serve homeless students as well as students in foster care. That is not as easy as it was, because now you have to go to the high school principal, you have to go to the district as well. And so it just takes longer to make it happen. Some challenges that are there that makes this a learning situation for them. But there is some other news that I wanted to share. House Bill 87 also said that we should expand the number of completion schools from 3 to 7. This chart on the right shows that the first 3, Mountain Ed, Foothills, and Coastal Plains, are doing that now, and I've shared the story with you. The next school is in Zone 7, which is down in southwest Georgia with Coastal Plains and southwest Georgia, RESA. They now know that they're in the process of doing this, and I'll talk about them a little bit later. But Ms. Taylor met with all the RESA directors and shared this timeline with them, so now they're able to lean forward in the saddle to see when they will be able to operate. And there are 2 good things that come from this. One, now the completion schools know what time year, I should say, they will no longer be able to continue to expand the number of students they're working with. And 2, the RESAs are now able to say, in about a year and a half before my date, the DOE is going to start working with them to begin the process of creating a new completion school. Let me talk a little bit about Zone 7. That's southwest Georgia, where we're going. We were able to do several things to get them ready. And I'll do this to get through this, Chris. The DOE was able to meet with all the superintendents who were interested in being a part of it. It was a webinar. After that, she followed up with the RESA directors, gave them more information about House Bill 87. Then the 2 RESA directors got together, brought all the superintendents into one location, and they were able to ask direct questions to Ms. Taylor about how can we do this. Out of that meeting, a group of superintendents said, we would like to be a part of this new Zone 7 completion school. They have signed letters of intent, submitted them to the Department of Education, and they're now in the process of advertising this week for a superintendent. They hope to be able to come to the DOE in January to get that superintendent approved. That will then allow the superintendent to continue with hiring and recruiting, finalize host and satellite sites, as well as secure curricular and other resources for them. That process is going, and I think they're on track for being able to open at the beginning of next school year. But they also have some complications. These are the districts that have agreed to do that, and I want to share this list with you. Now, the lesson we learned is you got to start early. And so the recommendation is that even now, we're going to start working with the next completion school, which is Zone 7, to get ready for their beginning in the following school year. A couple of things have to happen. Let me get this up. Oops, go back one. A couple of things have to happen. One, they're going to have to find a school district that is willing to host the completion school. In Zone 7, we have Doherty County that's decided to do that. They already had an evening school program that was working. They're going to have about 125 students, and that's going to work. It allows the smaller districts that are around Doherty to participate. When we go to Zone 4, we found Muskogee County that also wants to be able to host, and so that's going to work well for them as well. But if you don't find a school district that's already willing to do something like that, it will make it even harder. Here's why. A host site needs anywhere from 75 to 125 students in order to make it work financially. They also, for a satellite site, need about 15 to 35. Without someone like Doherty and Muskogee, it makes it more difficult. We found those two, and by starting early, we hope to be able to find additional large systems that are willing to do this. There's also another ask, Mr. Chairman. In House Bill 87, it says that these new schools will receive $5 billion. We believe that a best practice is when the superintendent is named, that $5 million is made available then, so they can go ahead and begin the process of setting up their new schools. And I do believe that is all I wanted to share with you on that.
Curtis, thank you very much. Appreciate the efforts in trying to kick this off and get this going. And I'm sure I'm not going to mix up that you had two bills to cover together there. You only had one. Let's start out again with Chairman Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a couple of questions. I know you stated that enrollment was down in all three of the existing schools.
Yes, sir.
Could you provide us with data with the age and demographics of those students?
We can get that and we can provide it. Yes, sir.
Okay. And then, you mentioned the 16 to 18 considered a dropout. If that number was dropped from 18 to 16, do you think that would affect the enrollment and clear some of the?
That would
my
make-
big concern is that we're losing those students and they may never graduate.
That would make a huge difference. Yes, sir, it would. If those students who are between the ages of 16 and 18 are now able to go ahead and directly enroll, as we've been talking about, it helps. We've created a problem. We're telling students in the state of Georgia at 16 you can drop out. But in this bill, we're saying you got to wait to 18 before you're able to make decisions. And so I do believe the current completion schools will come back with a recommendation for that.
Okay. And then I know in the DOE, one of the priorities was to strengthen the completion schools, one of the priorities for 2024. Do you have any of that information available?
To strengthen them?
Yes, sir.
No, sir, I don't.
Okay.
I'll have to find out what that means.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't see so many of them that popped up here. Representative Glaze, I believe that's you. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for this overview. I'm concerned that we have these major areas of students, homeless students, students who are in foster care, and then unfortunately students who get pregnant, in their late years of high school. And I was wondering if we could look at possibly giving waivers in those categories so that we could literally make sure that those students are not sitting outside of the gate waiting until they turn 18. So just those categories, and it may be some others that would be wise to put in there. But that's just an ask and a question that I think maybe we could consider.
Oh, I appreciate that, ma'am. The Department of Education is looking at that. We've identified them because of these three schools, and we've had requests come, especially from the foster facilities, about we used to be able to do this, why can't we do it now? Because when those students have to wait, they may go do something else. And so I do think you're going to see either a request for waivers or you're going to see a request to amend the law so that we can cover those students.
Okay. Let's go Representative Townsend. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Curtis, good seeing you again.
You too, sir.
Hey, question for you. You mentioned earlier in the presentation, I'll make sure I understand it. Were you saying that there's going to be different graduation requirements?
Yes, sir.
Depends on where the student goes to school, the base home system is?
Yes, sir. So what happens is we have a group of students. If you're not over the age of 18, then you cannot directly enroll with one of these schools. You're what's called a program student. And that program student's accountability is still with their home district or their resident district. Those graduation requirements then apply for each one of those. So when I showed you the districts that have decided to be a part of Zone 7, the completion school is going to have to keep up with all those 7 different graduation requirements for them, as well as their own graduation requirements for the students who are called LEA students. That's a part of the new burden. Yes, sir.
So that could be a registrar's or counselor's nightmare.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it is. And if you think about it, it's not just graduation, but it's attendance, it's discipline, it's all those things.
Go to a few more here. Senator Sims.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, Superintendent Jones, pharmacist, for your presentation. Give me the information concerning RESA's involvement, the RESA's involvement in the day-to-day operations of these schools.
I didn't understand the last part.
The day-to-day operations, how does RESA factor into the day-to-day operations? Because it seems as if we're giving a lot of responsibility to RESA's rather than the department, and we want to know who's going to be held responsible and accountable for these schools, because there were reasons for what bill was this?
87.
House Bill 87. That was reason.
So the RESA's role includes these. They will initially be the ones to help us get the superintendents together so they can decide when they want to start looking for a superintendent. They also will provide the regular support that they provide to all other school districts. So we've had conversations, for example, with all the RESA directors saying that if you have a completion school in your area and they have a host school, they should be allowed to sit in on your Board of Control meetings. We're going to have to talk about, do they get to be voting members or not, because law determines that, but that would be the role of the RESA. These completion schools, if they want to, could also go back to the RESA's and ask for the regular support that school districts ask for as far as literacy and the things that you've heard about. But that's it. The rest of it, they have a superintendent. The superintendent's responsible for their LEA students, those who are over 18 and have been declared a dropout. The regular superintendents are responsible for all those other students as well. And so the accountability goes back to either their resident school district if they have program students, or it goes to the completion school if the students are over 18 and have been declared a dropout.
For the last 5 years, we've asked in Southwest Georgia for, which I guess now is Zone 7.
Yes, ma'am.
We were not aware, when I say we, Senator Harbison, Senator Watson, Summers, and myself, that any planning was being done. We've had snippets, but we didn't get a chance to sit in and on the meetings. So we would love to be able to do that.
Yes, ma'am.
Because now you're talking about selecting a superintendent, which we know nothing about.
I would take that back, ma'am.
Thank you.
I believe we have time for one more. I see quite a few flashing, so I apologize, and Curtis, if you'd stay around too. But
Yes, sir.
we do have a hard stop in 2 minutes here. Senator James, I believe you've been patiently waiting.
Thank you very much. I have a question about completion schools. Are they in every district?
No,
and
ma'am.
also, did they take the place of alternative schools that we still have in Atlanta?
1 second. They're not all over the state yet. This bill asks us to expand the number from the original 3, Mountain Ed, Coastal Plains, and Foothills, to go to these 7. And the slide on the right shows in the left-hand corner the school year that we see these schools starting to open is what we're looking for. So Zone 7, which is Southwest Georgia, will open beginning of next year. And then we're moving up the west side of the state so that the next year one will open. That's why I said Muskogee has agreed to be maybe the host site for that one. And as you can see, by the year 27, 28, every district will then have access to a completion school. And it is not replacing alternative schools.
Thank you.
They may get alternative funding, the completion schools, but it does not replace alternative as you were talking about.
Thank you.
What I want to do is want to thank senators, representatives for being in the room and your minds and efforts. And then also want to thank the DOE, Amy and Curtis, thank y'all for coming and being a part. And looking forward to the session kicking off in January and doing a lot of good things for our children in this state. With that, we'll stand adjourned.